New alarm bells ringing tonight on the coronavirus outbreak in this country.
Doctors say the virus is spread through droplets when someone coughs or sneezes.
And I think the business community, it's in their interest that people actually stay home and stop the spread.
For a business that can allow more employees to telecommute, we want you to do that.
Hi, friends. I'm Andy Paul, host of the Sales Enablement Podcast, and I want to encourage you to listen to my brand new special 6-part podcast miniseries titled Selling with Purpose. The team behind Sales Enablement Podcast and I put together this incredible series of inspiring conversations exploring what it means to sell with a mission greater than just hitting your numbers in this era of COVID-19 and beyond. So tune in to hear from world-class enterprise sales leaders and learn how their 6 companies will close $50 billion selling remotely. See how they've supported essential workers with the products and services they need to stay safe and thrive during this time of crisis. Subscribe to Selling with a Purpose now on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, Stitcher, or wherever you listen to podcasts. Guided Selling from RingDNA makes your entire sales team more effective by revealing exactly what reps should do and when to do it. Guided Selling works by transforming sales data into a curated list of prioritized sales actions. So when reps start their day, they'll never again wonder which prospects and accounts or hot inbound leads to reach out to next. Guided Selling even shifts reps' priority in response to real-time buying signals. Finally, even new reps can sell like seasoned ones. Let RingDNA be your guide to success. Learn more at ringdna.com/guided selling. That's ringdna.com/guided selling.
It's time to accelerate. Hey friends, this is Andy. Welcome to episode 725 of Accelerate. That's episode 725 of Accelerate, the sales podcast of record. I have another great episode lined up for you today. Joining me as my guest on this episode of Accelerate is John Crowley. John is the author of a book titled Knuckle Dragging Sales, a primitive process to make more money. And really the topic of the day is, have we made sales too complicated? Have we made sales too complex? You know, it's one of the key topics we're digging into. And I guess the question is not necessarily that we've made it too complex, it's that we aren't doing a good job of preparing salespeople for the task of selling. I mean, maybe we're too obsessed with process, and as a result, we're not training our sellers how to actually sell. You know, are we sending our sellers off to compete, off to fight for business without the necessary grounding in the basics, the basic skills, the essential skills, as I call them, that they really need? So we get into this and much more today. Now, before I get to John, I want to take a quick second to talk about my Sales Growth Planner. Now, this is the ultimate planner and tracker for high-performance sellers and sales leaders. The Sales House Sales Growth Planner is built to help you identify your big, bold sales goals and give you a step-by-step framework to enable the learning and growing you need to achieve them. So the Sales Growth Planner is designed to enable you to act on your highest priorities and ensure that you're holding yourself accountable. It's all based on a planning format that I've successfully used for over 4 decades in my own career as a top producer and high-growth sales leader. And the thought and effort you put into creating your plan will be repaid with interest at the end of 12 months. So become the best version of you. Visit thesaleshouse.com/planner to get your growth planner today. That is thesaleshouse.com/planner. All right, let's jump into it. John, welcome to the show.
Andy, it's my pleasure. Thank you for having me on.
Well, it's a pleasure to finally talk to you. We've been talking about this for a while. As I was looking back on my notes, it's like, it's been a while since we were talking about having you on the show. So I'm glad we're finally able to make it happen.
Yeah, thank you so much. I'm really excited to be here. I hope we can provide some value for your listeners.
I'm sure you will. So you're joining us today from
Nashville, Tennessee.
Music City,
home
USA.
of Music City, yeah.
There we go. Now, are you a musician by any chance?
I am not. I've got very fat fingers, and there is nothing that these little pudgy little sausages are going to be able to play whatsoever.
And are you a country music fan?
You know, when you live in Nashville, Tennessee, you have to adopt country music at some point in time. Would I call myself a fan? No. But do I listen to it and do I mind it? I listen to it and I don't mind it. So,
Well, there you go.
Not a huge fan.
Do you encounter, musicians, celebs, in your day-to-day life?
Constantly. I live
Really?
about 2 miles away from Dolly Parton. Trace Adkins lives down the road. There's just tons of musicians around here, and you'll go to the store, you'll go to the coffee shop, and you'll see somebody, and you go, "That is definitely somebody famous." I have no clue who it is, but it's somebody famous because they do not look like the rest of us.
Yeah,
they got cool hair, tight clothes, lots of tattoos, and clearly they're in the music industry.
Right. Their jeans cost as much as my house payment. Yeah.
That's exactly right. Yeah.
Well, I'm a big Dolly Parton fan. I mean, she's such a fabulous songwriter. And so.
Yeah, she's done some wonderful things around here and out in East Tennessee for sure. She's a wonderful lady.
Yeah, I'd fanboy out if I saw her. So, well, good. Well, thanks for joining us. So we're going to talk about sales, obviously, but you've written a book called Knuckle Dragging Sales. Interesting title. So where did that come from?
Yeah, so it actually came from, it was on my LinkedIn profile originally. I had that as just a knuckle dragging sales guy. And I got
meaning what? When you were saying that, what did that mean for you?
I got one of two responses from that. One was overwhelmingly positive and one was overwhelmingly negative. What it really means is going back into prehistoric times when things were much simpler. It was a time when you either hunted and gathered or you starved and died. And in sales today, I think you persist and win or you quit and fail. So knuckle dragging sales is not about going in with brute force and bashing your buyer or the gatekeeper over the head with a club. It's a de-evolution revolution designed to bring us back to simpler tactics that work. So when I say simple, I don't mean easy. Running is simple. Running a marathon is hard. Sales to me is the marathon of professions.
All right. That's a good quote from your book, by the way. So, well, let's talk about that because we're in an environment in sales these days where, on one hand, there's increasing amount of specialization of roles. Especially with the growth of inside sales. There's sales development reps and business development reps that are focused on proactive outbound or proactively responding to inbound leads. Handing things off to account execs. How does what you're talking about sort of fit into that scheme? Obviously, it's not the entire world, but with what you're talking about, how does it fit into sort of this emerging sales ecosystem that we have?
So I think the reason that I came up with this book and the idea of this was me scratching my own itch. I spend a ton of time mentoring and coaching salespeople, and it was so interesting when I talked to them and I would say, okay, how do you segment your customers? And Andy, I'd get totally silent or I'd get total silence. And I'd say, how do you prioritize your time? And I get blank stares. Or I say, how do you, what is your quota? What are your goals? And I would get crickets. And I just thought to myself,
people didn't know their quota?
People didn't know their quota. They didn't know what their goals were. They didn't know where they were tracking to their goals. And so this wasn't like a one-time occurrence or every other time. I mean, this was consistent that I was hearing over and over again. And they would come to me because they were confused. They would say, I read this book and it was a great book and I'm not going to throw any under the bus. They're all fantastic. But I tried to implement that one new sales process into my existing process and it was a train wreck. And that's when all of a sudden I realized that, most good companies that have a built-in sales process, they've got something already structured. And then by a rep going out and being proactive and trying to learn and learn their craft, by reading those books, they were then trying to layer one process on top of another and they were conflicting. And so as we talked, I realized that let's get back to the basics of sales and then the other stuff will figure its way out. We'll figure out all the other stuff. But you got to know your customers, your segmenting, you got to know your goals as the basics of what you do before you start anything else.
Yeah, well, I agree with you on that 100%. I think there are more basics that are perhaps even more foundational than that I talk about in terms of human selling skills and the ability to connect with another human being and form a relationship and so on. But it's the same theory is that I think that so often the training these days assumes a certain level of competence in the basics, which just doesn't exist. And whether it's in the case of what I talk about in terms of the ability to just be able to ask good questions, the ability to be able to listen, to be able to be deliberate in how you deliver value. to what you're talking about in terms of understanding what's driving you, what you're trying to achieve. Though I do find it really curious that people aren't aware of their quota. But that's why do you think that is? I mean, that one sort of sticks with me. Because I want to dig on that a little bit. So why do you think people just weren't aware of their quota?
So where I see this most often happen is in big companies, where it's almost like a machine, and the machine is so big for you to have any impact on that big machine. It requires just a tremendous amount of effort. And so a lot of these folks were complacent, for lack of better words. And they knew that every month, if they did the same type of behaviors, they would hit their quota. They wouldn't blow it out. They might miss it every now and again, but all in all, they were consistently hitting their quota. And it was just because the machine was so big for it to fail, it would have to be something catastrophic.
Right.
But at the same time, they're craving. They want to do more. And I think what's happened is you talked about the basic assumptions that we have that, certain salespeople will have certain skill sets. I think what happens is over time, as we take on more training, as we take on more guidance, as we read more books, we kind of lose track of some of that basics that we're supposed to always remain focused on before we go layering on additional techniques and skill sets.
Yeah, I agree. We can stop the conversation now.
All right.
Good job. So why is that though? So why are we, and this is, I think, one of the failures of sales training as it is mostly constituted in companies, large and small, is, focus on, let's train people on things that are a little more arcane. And maybe even more basic than that. Maybe we'll train them on our process, but we don't really say, okay, are these people really even capable of competing to win a deal? I mean, I interested in your take on this, because my sense is throughout, and people listening are probably sick of hearing this, is that we've lost this emphasis on competition and winning in so many cases in sales because of the process. People just think, we can depend on the process. We're going to do a certain amount of things, and everybody's focused on the conversion metrics from stage to stage. And I call that playing the odds. And increasingly in some companies, they are just playing the odds. And that's sort of what you were talking about. They can show up in these big companies, and they can be moderately competent, and enough things will happen that the odds are good. They'll hit their number or come close. And I see fewer people actually doing what it takes to sell and win.
Yeah, I think that's an accurate statement. I would also add that I have found that the level of coaching it's either been de-emphasized or it's just not being emphasized whatsoever. And so what's happening is the reps are taking it upon themselves to improve when they should have the guidance of a sales coach. And when I say coach, I mean like their manager within the organization. I'm not saying they should go out and get coaching. And what's happened there is that I do. It would be great. I'm just saying, I'm not trying to sell my own product. That's all I'm saying.
That's okay. You can promote yourself.
Yeah. So I think what's happened is we've taken these top sales performers, put them into sales management and said, okay, use the same skill sets that got you here to make everybody else better. And that's the big miss in this industry thus far, is that we're really not training our sales managers to appropriately coach their reps. We're just throwing them in there and saying, hey, sink or swim. I wish you all the best. Here's a pair of water wings, and you're going to do your best to stay afloat. But we're not giving them the training that they need.
Well, and so I wonder about that. And yes, this is a conversation topic that is held a lot. And there was a big conversation, one listserv I follow that was online last week about this. And the general tone was, poor sales managers, we can't blame them for lack of coaching. They're not being given the tools and so on. But there has to be a certain self-awareness among somebody who is a manager to say, look, I'm only going to succeed if my people succeed. Full stop, right? I can't win if my people can't win. And so it's like, okay, well, what's the message we're giving somebody? Granted, it'd be lovely if we gave people tools, but I never got that training. I've managed big teams and growing teams and very successful teams. It didn't take me more than a few months to learn, this just isn't going to happen unless I make everybody else better, right? That's my job. My job is to make everybody else around me better.
Poor sales managers, you don't get it? Tough. Go find it. There are resources out there. Read a book, hire a coach, hire a mentor, do something. I'm sorry people aren't giving you the tools, and tough luck. It's never been that way. Unlikely to change. But you have to, I think the basic self-awareness is, I stand on the shoulders of people that work for me, and I need to make them better.
I think that's a valid point. I would also add that I think a lot of times what happens is when you take that sales professional and stick them into that managerial role, their mindset is, I was successful, so I'm going to teach everyone to do it my way. That's okay in certain instances, but when you've got multiple managers, when you have very disparate personalities amongst your sales team, you can't plug everybody into the same socket as you do yourself. So you've got to come up with unique ways of coaching and motivating those salespeople. But you're right. There is a certain amount of onus that they need to take it upon themselves to go and read some books, to listen to podcasts like this one. I mean, that's a great example. This is exactly where they should be going to get that development. But I don't even think that their sales leaders, a lot of the sales executives know that these types of resources exist. I think they're going at their own pace, and they're just trying to do a million things at once, and they're not doing any of them successfully.
No matter where your sales team is working from, RingDNA can enable them to be more productive and effective. RingDNA offers a complete platform for remote sales teams that gives reps the tools they need to connect with more prospects and create more opportunities and drive more revenue no matter where they're working from. And managers can get real-time insight they need to coach reps to success. Win more deals from anywhere on the planet with RingDNA. Learn more about how RingDNA helps remote teams at ringdna.com/remote work. That's ringdna.com/remote work.
New alarm bells ringing tonight on the coronavirus outbreak in this country.
Doctors say the virus is spread through droplets when someone coughs or sneezes.
And I think the business community, it's in their interest that people actually stay home and stop the spread.
For a business that can allow more employees to telecommute, we want you to do that.
Hi, friends. I'm Andy Paul, host of the Sales Enablement Podcast, and I want to encourage you to listen to my brand new special 6-part podcast miniseries titled Selling with Purpose. The team behind Sales Enablement Podcast and I put together this incredible series of inspiring conversations exploring what it means to sell with a mission greater than just hitting your numbers in this era of COVID-19 and beyond. So tune in to hear from world-class enterprise sales leaders and learn how their 6 companies will close $50 billion selling remotely. See how they've supported essential workers with the products and services they need to stay safe and thrive during this time of crisis. Subscribe to Selling with a Purpose now on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, Stitcher, or wherever you listen to podcasts.
I think you may be right on that. Interesting point. And I think if we were to say, okay, what can we do best to help a frontline sales manager, somebody newly promoted or someone that's been promoted but struggling, and I think you raise a key point. I mean, maybe we both raised a good point. One is, you got to take some responsibility for this yourself. First level of mindset is you need to have the mindset to understand, look, I'm only going to succeed if my people succeed. And to your point is everybody's unique, and there is no one way. And I think this one way thing is one of the things that really drives me nuts in sales. And you see it increasingly as people become more process obsessed, as I call it, is that, I think the processes that dictates one way to sell. And you can't even really say that the processes have ever been proven out because given the fact that industry research is showing the poor level of quota attainment across the board in B2B sales, we can't say any of these processes are really successful. And certainly not on a uniform basis for every individual. And so we're trying to make everybody be a clone of someone else. And I think the beauty of sales and the power of sales is when someone is themselves, authentically the best version of themselves, not the best version of, somebody that's supposed to be cloned.
Well, I mean, and it It depends on the organization, but what I have seen time and time again is that these sales processes that have been put in place by sales leadership that may not have ever carried the bag, and therefore they're creating processes with no tribal knowledge whatsoever. And I think as you take a step back, and a better approach to that is everybody has a sales process, whether it's documented or not. You have one.
Yes.
It may just be tribal knowledge. So bringing in
your personal sales process.
That's right. That's
yes,
exactly right.
Absolutely, yes.
Yeah. And so by bringing in multiple people with different personality types. I mean, these days, most companies do some sort of personality test, but bringing a variety of people with different personalities and mapping out all of their different sales processes, and then looking at it and saying, okay, where are there duplications that we can simplify? Where are there unique steps within your sales process that maybe other ones could or should adopt? And then you come up with one that you've got buy-in from multiple people throughout the organization. I personally think that's the best way to go about creating a sales process versus the dictator. This is the sales process. You've got to stick to it, because people just don't respond to that.
Well, I think that part of what's driving that is that we have all these wonderful new tools that exist in sales is they do create data, and the data is used to say, okay, we've got metrics now or key KPIs we can establish looking at these data. And it sort of, pushes this trend toward conformity, where I think it's, in sales, it's the people who succeed, and you sort of allude to this in your book to some degree, is the people who succeed are the non-conformists, the top performers.
Yeah. It's being different. It's the people that look at the way everybody else, in particular the competition, is going about doing business, and they say, okay, I can't do it better than you, because trying to do things better is just a downward spiral. Like if I do something faster than you, then you're going to turn around the next week and do it faster than me. But by doing something different, that makes you unique, and that's your unique selling proposition. So yeah, I'm a big advocate, huge advocate of doing things different as opposed to better.
Yeah. Well, I've frustrated many managers during my career who just wanted me to follow the script and the recipe. And it was like, yeah, I could do that, but if it doesn't work for me, I'm the one who gets fired, not you.
But again, Andy,
I'd rather go out on my terms.
That's a valid point. But again, that is a personality type. I think you can diagnose those people that have your independent personality types versus those that are the conformists, that if you say, do it this way, this is going to work, then those types of people work well in that type of environment.
Yeah. No, I would be weeded out in a heartbeat these days with personality tests and so on. It's like, oh yeah, no. I mean, I'm the ultimate team player, but that doesn't mean I don't seek credit, bring people together. Sure. But I can do it my way. I think it's going to, and it's funny, I did take actually a personality test, last year sometime, one that reasonably well known. And, I was completely unsuitable for a sales career. According to the results, the guy that was one of the principals of the company and gave it to me says, "Were you trying to game this or something?" I said, "No." But I think that's the weakness of those assessments too. But anyway,
I agree. Sometimes those people are the best salespeople.
Well, you want that. Yeah, I want people who are curious, who are different, who have their own way of looking at things. I don't mind people that are idiosyncratic. I'm not heavily. Maybe I have my own idiosyncrasies, but they're curious and unique way of looking at the world. Those, for me, are the people who have always been the ones I want to work with and have worked for and have hired to work for me. It's like, about one time I remember in a job startup, we brought in a senior salesperson who became highly recommended by a board member, and was sort of out of this environment you talked about, big companies. Sort of had to show up, and the big company was in a hot streak, and everybody was killing it. It had nothing really to do with the salespeople, but the board members all thought they did.
Yes.
And this person was just an absolute disaster. But hey, fit the profile perfectly.
When you got your personality results, would you say that you were more fit for a sales manager than a sales rep?
I don't think they were testing that at the time. But I don't know. I'd have to go back and look. Yeah, the thing is,
not everybody who's in sales, and this is, I think, one of the things that still goes on, perhaps less than it might have before. But certainly when I started my career, the whole emphasis was there really weren't a lot of career salespeople. They were sort of going through an era in the sort of early days of the tech business and so on. As you were up or out pretty much, and finally then things started shifting even after about 10, 15 years, where it's like, well, no, we got all these great senior people who tried management, decided they didn't want to do it, but fabulous salespeople. Let's make room for them. And so I think there's sort of less of that. You got to be one or the other, or you have to go from one to the next. And I think, I think now there seems to be more acceptance, hopefully, of people just are really good at sales and just want to be career sales professionals. And that's fantastic. They don't have to be a manager.
Yeah, the majority of my work is in the healthcare space, and I would say that by and large, the healthcare companies have embraced career salespeople, and they're some of the best, right? They are steady Stevens. You can always, be assured that they're going to come in at quota or slightly above. You're not going to have 150 or 200% to quota a year, but you're going to get these steady Steve every time. And so in the healthcare space,
like that. You hire a team. Actually, for those on my email list, even though you're going to hear this several months after we record it, but the day we're recording it, my email that went out to my followers was all about, you don't hire individuals, you hire a team. And you need to have people of all different ability levels and different perspectives and personalities that complement each other to be effective.
Totally agree, especially in a more consultative sale. If you've got that transactional stick to the script, then that's the place where you can hire that same exact personality type, and you just put them through. But you can almost guarantee they're not going to be sticking around for a long time. No, and this is, I think, an issue that some enterprise-oriented sales teams are having now with sort of their special hyper specializational roles. Is that the entry level roles that's tough work, especially phone-based, making a ton of dials a day. And they're not getting nurtured and developed and, see the light at the end of the tunnel the way that certainly we may have earlier in our careers. And I sort of despair a little bit that we're not grooming enough people in the right way to come through these entry-level jobs and really, move into more consultative type selling roles, because they're doing something that's very transactional up front. I'm trying to set a meeting for an accounting sale, but it's just the tip of what is a consultative sale. So I worry about that structure in terms of being able to groom future sellers. What makes it even more complicated is you've got this millennial generation who craves that feedback. They want the feedback. They want to be coached. They also want to move up the career ladder pretty quickly. So you've got an opposing dynamic within that scenario that makes it very difficult to make the company happy as well as the salespeople happy. Yeah, but I think this is one of the issues, and certainly one that we're trying to address in my business in the sales house, is that we're not doing a good enough job as a profession of showing people where the opportunities are going to come from and what they need to do individually in order to be successful in those future roles. And this is a problem, right? Because companies have scaled back sales training, or again, sales training is all process oriented. And this idea, back to a point you made before about coaching, is coaching tends to be very opportunity oriented when they do one-on-one time, as opposed to mentoring, which I would say call it mentoring, right? As a manager, is mentoring being, how do I develop this person, help this person develop as an individual, not just do I help them close more deals. And so we're ignoring that whole development side of things. That's a big gap, and I agree with you 100% on that. We are missing the development piece, and we're more about. I think we're missing both the mentoring and the coaching, but ultimately the underlying miss is the development of our people, and it's something they're craving. It's something we've got to figure out if we want to be able to keep this generation in these types of roles, because they're not going to keep doing it if things don't change. Yeah. So I think as a manager, and I've spoken this recently at a conference, is that if you're a frontline sales manager and you're saying, okay, well, how do I spend my time, right? Because, all right, great, we've got this whole brouhaha going on about not enough coaching, or I'm not giving you enough tools to coach and so on. But to your point you made sort of earlier in terms of just really understanding the basics, is how you allocate your time as a frontline manager is a good place to start, right? If you understand how you should be allocating your time and at what tasks, then
maybe you have some clarity. And maybe then you can start saying, okay, well, maybe I as a manager need help in these areas. So for me, I'll just lay it out there is I have this acronym I use called POPE, P-O-P-E. And first PS, it's process, opportunities, people, education. Right? And this is how you should divide your time. So I'd say 40% on process. It's building your organization, building your capacities, right, as an organization. That could be your process, your training, You probably should spend 30% of your time on opportunities, right? Working with people, helping people succeed in the tactical sense. Second P is people. Spend 20% of your time with individuals, helping them develop. What do they need? This is, to creating their personal learning path to help them get better. And then the last 10% is 10% of your time should be spent on learning. You yourself, either learning or in a group activity, helping your team learn. And 40, 30, 20, 10, process, opportunities, people, education. And I think if you do that, you're going to be in good shape.
What do you think that weighting is in a typical organization with a typical manager?
Right now, I think it's about 80% on process. And and people get virtually nothing. I mean, I've sat through conferences, people talk about, hey, we don't do one-on-one coaching anymore because, or we don't do one-on-ones anymore because we don't get any value out of them. Well, it's like, well, you're not the one that's supposed to be getting the value out of it as a manager. It's the person that gets the value out of it. And just the way this guy said it, he's VP of sales at this good-sized software company. You could probably hear me rolling my eyes in the audience. It's like, dude, it's not for you. It's for them. But this is the issue, right? Is we've got managers who have completely wrong context for one-on-ones and working with their people and developing their people and prioritizing how to help people get better. And so I think that these days, we all hear stories about, especially in companies are driven more by metrics and so on. You got metrics jockeys, managers are turned into metrics jockeys. They're just managing the numbers in part because they have to report on the numbers. So to the senior people who, to your point earlier, never really carried a bag and don't understand. And people think that that's, the numbers are the whole story.
I think it's interesting, the dynamics, because it sounds like you spend most of your time in that tech space. I spend most of my time in the healthcare space. I would say 80% of the time is spent on opportunity. And what's happened is these sales managers are nothing more than mega reps. So as soon as the rep runs into a little objection they can't handle or whatever, then they call in the manager to rescue them and fix it. And I would say the other
sounds
20%,
like car sales.
Yeah, that's exactly right. And that, in healthcare, that's the way it feels because, the business of healthcare has been around for a long time, and these companies it's very incestuous. There are people that start off in one company and they move to all these other different companies, and they just take that same process with them. So I would say most healthcare companies have very similar processes that they have not adapted or adopted in any way, shape, or form.
Right.
And then they spend a lot of time because rather than being salespeople, they're more public relations reps. They're out there giving information. They're not closing the entire deal, which is the big difference between healthcare and tech. It's interesting.
Yeah.
I think it's an interesting dynamic.
Yeah, actually, and so what we're doing in the sales house is we're actually a broad mix. So we got lots of just traditional industries people representing, and this is, to me, is the most interesting group of people in sales these days because in the tech business they spend a lot of money investing in the latest sort of tools and technologies for sales. Whereas in more traditional industries and certainly smaller businesses that aren't tech-driven, they haven't. And it's a lot of, I don't say it's the same as it's been. They're sort of struggling as well. How do we adapt to this environment? And I think some of the advice you give in your book and talking about basics is really what these companies really need. Actually, all companies need it, but these in particular, because it's easy to get seduced by the promise of, well, we can automate this process and this will really work for you. And it doesn't work for everybody. So, well, John, unfortunately, running out of time here. So before we go and this has been a fantastic conversation. We'll have you back and we'll do it again.
Great. Thank you.
how can people get in touch with you and learn more about what you're doing?
So the best way is to get in touch with me is to go to knuckledraggingsales.com. It's my website. You can get in touch with me. I've got lots of freebies up there, anything that you can imagine, a lot of free value adds, and feel free to download anything you want. But knuckledraggingsales.com.
Perfect. And if you're in Nashville, maybe
look me up.
Look them up. There you go.
Look me up.
All right, well, John, it's been fantastic. Appreciate you taking the time. And like I said, we'll look forward to doing it again.
Andy, I thoroughly enjoyed it. My pleasure.
Okay, friends, that was Accelerate for this week. First of all, as always, I want to thank you for joining me. Also want to thank my guest today, John Crowley. Join me again next week as my guest will be Bill Wilson. Bill's the co-founder and CEO at Sales Right Company. And we're going to be talking about how to present your pricing to help you close late-stage opportunities. So be sure to join us then. And before you go, don't forget to check out The Sales House. It is the sales performance accelerator for B2B sellers just like you. Visit thesaleshouse.com/accelerate for a special offer just for the listeners of this show. So look forward to seeing you there. So thanks again for joining me. Until next week, I'm your host, Andy Paul. Good selling, everyone.
RingDNA is the leading sales enablement platform that uses AI to help scale business growth. Trusted by the top companies across the globe, RingDNA offers a suite of powerful tools for every sales role. The RingDNA Dialer radically improves sales productivity and call connection rates, while guided selling helps reps know exactly what to do and when to do it. Conversation AI uses artificial intelligence to surface the most impactful coaching opportunities in real time. So, no matter where your team is working from, the RingDNA platform can help them exponentially increase call connections, opportunities, and revenue. Learn more at ringdna.com/platform. That's ringdna.com/platform.